It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. You can email us at randykabc@gmail.com and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. Today was known as May Revise Day in Sacramento as Gavin Newsom unveiled the updated budget that shows that we are facing an $11 billion budget shortfall, which means Karen Bass is not getting her $1 billion bailout anytime soon. But don't you worry, Gavin is very mindful about the budget.
So let's talk about the budget. Here we are, $321.9 billion budget submitting to...
By the way, and we'll get into this, when Gavin Newsom started his first year as governor, the California state budget was $202 billion. Now it's
$21.9 billion.
$321 billion. Ashley Zavala has been pointing that out, and it's quite fascinating because that means the budget has gone up over 50% in 6 short years.
Submitting to the legislature, $226.4 billion is general fund. We've $15.7 billion in total reserves, and a shortfall that we're projecting on the revenue and expense side of $11.9 billion. I want to put that in perspective, that shortfall in perspective. It's about 5.8% of the general funds. You can put it in perspective of previous years, significantly higher.
It's the thing it's fascinating when you think about these astronomical numbers is an $11 billion budget shortfall, which is massive, is only 5% of the budget. That's how massive the California state budget has gotten. In fact, it's double the size of what it was 10 years ago.
Significantly higher, going back to the Great Recession, another recession. You could see some of the numbers that previous governors have had to grapple with. So by relative years, this is pretty mild. And as a consequence, we are moving forward with making decisions that not only address the concerns this year related to the $11.9 billion, but mindful that...
There it is. You knew it was coming.
But mindful that we need to tighten things up into the out years as well. And thus the fiscal responsibility slide. Obviously, we need to plan for the long term, which is difficult if the slides did not highlight that. In the best of times, but in a time of just...
What could you do with this state? And this is something that Steve Hilton has talked about a lot. What could you do with this state if you brought just spending by the state down to the levels it was 10 years ago?
But in a time of just extraordinary uncertainty, it is particularly challenging. And that's why we need to be particularly mindful of the world we're living in and what are the trend lines that define it. So here are the solutions.
All right, give us a solution, Mr. Gavin. One of the things that he says is going to help balance the budget is making a couple of tweaks to one of the programs that led us into this budget deficit. And that is, of course, expanding Medi-Cal to everybody in the state if you're at that poverty level, whether you're in the country legally or not.
So here are the solutions. $5 billion on a freeze on our Medi-Cal expansion. We're not cutting or rolling back those that are enrolled in our Medi-Cal system. We're just capping it, particularly for those without documentation. We're the only state in the country, and many states have expanded.
So right now, anybody can join Medi-Cal, and you can get that sweet health care from the state of California that is very, very, very generous to the point where you actually have a financial incentive to stay below that poverty line because the health benefits are so good and there's no premiums and everything else. And you would have to make quite a lot more money outside of what qualifying for Medi-Cal is and qualifying for food stamps and everything else to even break even. That's how generous this program is, and we offered it to everybody. So Gavin's fix is capping it, which doesn't mean cutting anybody out of it that's already joined. It means stopping anybody from joining it starting next year. So could more people join it before then? Yes. Will they have now an incentive to so they can get locked in before they cut this thing off? Definitely. Can we afford that? No. Do you get irritated when people ask and answer their own questions? Probably.
Health care under their Medicaid system, our Medi-Cal here in California system. No state has done more than the state of California. No state will continue to do more than the state of California by a long shot.
California does everything. California spends more money on this. California spends more money on that. But as successful as Gavin Newsom would love to tout California for being, and yes, there are some huge successes in California, but it's also true that a lot of the reason California is number one at this and that and manufacturing, whatever, is California just has more people than most other states. 40 million people in this state. The next highest is Texas, which is at like 33 million. But we also have more poverty than any other state. We have more poor people than any other state. We have more homelessness than any other state.
And that's a point of pride. And it's a point of privilege to be governor. That's been part of that effort. So we're going to freeze enrollment, which in the out years, budget year plus one, represents about $3.3 billion. And these solutions are...
And by the way, I don't know how they come up with these projections because they were already off on the original projections for this plan. Gavin Newsom had to go back to the legislature twice in just the last few months and say, oh, I need another $2.7 billion and then another $2.7 billion because Medi-Cal is broke. So even the projections that he's making for capping the people getting into this program at the beginning of next year, we don't know if these projections are accurate, and we might be in the same place. And if he doesn't want to throw anybody off the plan, then you have a whole lot of incentive to get as many people in the country illegally on that plan as possible before January.
And these solutions are budget year. I'm looking beyond the 3.3 represents budget year plus one. The monthly premiums.
I know he's a weird guy, and I know he's dyslexic, but can you at least talk like a human if you want reporters and the general public who might be watching this on YouTube to understand what you're talking about?
I'm looking beyond the 3.3 represents budget year plus one. The monthly premiums, we believe that people should have some skin in the game as it relates to contributions. So,
okay, this is interesting because one of the things that's so beneficial about being so destitute that you're on Medi-Cal, which is a huge portion of the state, is that you don't pay premiums, you don't pay co-pays. It is very, very generous health care.
Skin in the game as it relates.
And typically, if you're working an entry-level job or you're working in one of the first jobs that you have that's offering health care, that plan is terrible and the premiums are expensive. And you might be wondering, was I better off when I made no money? It's wrong that people sometimes have to think that.
Skin in the game as it relates to contributions. So we are looking to a monthly premium that would generate through that program, wouldn't go into effect till January 1st, 2027.
So by the time Gavin's out of office, which is coming soon, he's going to have a premium for everyone in the country illegally that wants to be on Medi-Cal. It's no longer free. You got to pay $100 a month.
This is my confirmation team. Again, I have no notes up here. And would, in the budget year plus one, represent about $2.1 billion.
So he could save $3 billion here, $3 billion there. That still leaves quite a big shortfall, but maybe there's other places we can cut. Homelessness? No, we're not going to cut that. What are you kidding? Gavin's going to spend even more money and then yell at the cities and counties for not doing well with that money, even though we don't ever want to track where that money went. But Medi-Cal is a huge expense in this state, and it is shocking sometimes to just understand how many people are on this program. And it only continues to grow. And as Gavin will admit himself, it's way more expensive than we assumed it would be.
But the issue around Medicaid, Medi-Cal, it's a $179 billion budget this year. Not insignificant. That's all in. Federal, not just general fund support. $179 billion.
Wait, isn't the whole budget for the entire state $314 billion? Oh, my. Now, I know some of that gets reimbursed by the feds, although not the illegal part.
5.3% of that is the undock expansion. 5.3%. That's part of it. But those that just want to run with headlines about that, I think miss what should be considered, which is the utilization rates across the spectrum are up. You saw Some of you may have even written about it. The supplementals that went out in many other states that don't have the expansive policies that California have. Pennsylvania was one of them, Colorado, Indiana. You can look those up. Significant cost pressures in their Medicaid system as well. I highlight that because it's not unique to California.
Okay, Gavin, but you're the governor of California, and we're the state that's in a budget shortfall, and part of it is this program that you champion. So can we really worry a little less about what's going on in the other states?
And so we have to address that, and we have to be honest about it. Our approach was not to kick people off and not to roll back the expansion, but to level set on what we can do and what we can't do. And so there are 5 or 6 actions.
So we have a program right now that we can't afford to maintain, and we're not going to take anybody out of the program. We're just going to stop people from joining it in about 7 months.
And so there are 5 or 6 actions we're taking. I highlighted 3 or 4 of them. There are a few others that we're taking where we have to tighten things up. Now, legislature may have different ideas, and I look forward to engaging the legislature. But I made a commitment to people, and by the way, it was one of the most transparent commitments anyone that's ever followed me. When I was mayor of San Francisco, I became the first mayor in the United States of America. I promoted this and I promised this as a member of the County Board of Supervisors. I said, when I'm mayor, my commitment to the people of San Francisco is to become the first state in the United States of America with universal health care, regardless of pre-existing conditions.
Yeah, where are we with that? Gavin campaigned on that as governor and immediately threw that one away.
Regardless of your ability to pay and regardless of your immigration status, we delivered on that. Healthy SF was formed. When I ran for office as lieutenant governor, I said, that's my resolve, my commitment. It's my value. It's what I believe, I hold dear. I believe it's a universal right. And I have for 6 years championed that. Not on the receiving end of that. I've championed it, working with remarkable leaders. Senator Durazo and many, many others. Rambla, many have been just extraordinary partners and champions in this space.
Although he did quickly abandon the universal health care for all idea because there just wasn't enough support for it, and the state, there's no way, could afford it.
This is a tough budget in that respect. So I've been very prideful of the expansions and the progress we've made. But
by the way, I'm not defending our current system because our current system's a mess. I don't know what the answer is.
But you have to level set with folks. The utilization, we now have 1.6 million people just on the NDOC side. There's about 10.7% of the total. About 14.9 million people.
Okay, those are huge numbers. Listen to this again. How many people are on what is supposed to be California's insurance for the needy, for the most impoverished among us?
The utilization, we now have 1.6 million people just on the NDOC side.
So of the people that are in the country illegally, 1.6 million of them have signed up in this program in just the first year, and they've got a whole other year before they're not allowed to sign up anymore.
There's about 10.7% of the total, about 14.9 million people.
14 million people in the state of California qualify for Medi-Cal. That should tell you something, because there's 40 million people in the state. So if you divide 14 divided by 40, that is, what, a third? It's a little less than half. About a third of the state, of the richest state, of the fourth largest economy, is in such a level of poverty that they qualify for Medi-Cal. That's not a great thing to champion.
That receive Medi-Cal in the state.
And again, there is an issue with the program being so generous that you're actually incentivized, if you want to keep that program, to work less.
Significantly larger number than we anticipated. But again, so is the case with the caseload broadly. You're seeing utilization numbers that are significantly greater than projections in state after state. Again, not just the state of California. So
if this is a program we can't afford, maybe it's too generous. And that sucks to say, but you know, there are plenty of people who are not in that 14 million that to pay through the nose for worse health care.
So we're offering this approach. Legislature will have their approach. But one thing we can't is approach a balanced budget unless we address the costs of Medicaid or Medi-Cal in this state. And so we're going to need to do that in partnership. That's the spirit to which always I submit this budget. Humility, gratitude to all of you, particularly the front rows here, the finance team, to these two that need a vacation and some rest, Erica and Joe. Thank you for your fortitude and your aptitude, and thank you for your...
Okay, he's wandering off into who knows what territory. We'll continue here with Gavin Newsom, but what do you think about his proposal? Gavin's plan to balance the budget, which is being impacted by the expansion of Medi-Cal to people in the country illegally, is to cut off new entries to that program starting next year and to charge people in the country illegally on Medi-Cal $100 a month of a premium starting in 2027. Do you think that goes far enough here? Do you think that is going to make the state solvent? 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Do you want to see the state of California continue this expansion of Medi-Cal to the undocumented? 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Do you think the $100 premium is fair? Do you think it's unfair? Do you think it's not enough? 800-222-5222. We'll continue not only with your phone calls, but with Gavin's May revised budget presentation. This is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. California is facing an $11.8 billion budget shortfall. One of the ways that Gavin Newsom wants to balance the budget is to make a cutoff for the expansion of Medi-Cal in the state of California to people in the country illegally, where starting next year, they can't join, but we won't kick off anybody that's there. But starting in 2027, everyone who's on it has to pay a $100 premium. Do you think that's going to balance the budget? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Well, this is interesting. We're going to go to the former sheriff of Los Angeles, Alex Villanueva. Sheriff Villanueva, what's going on?
Not a whole lot, Randy. How are you doing?
Doing great.
I take it the budget, not so much.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I got to ask you, Randy, and I don't know if anybody's asked our favorite governor with the gel, the hair gel. If his budget grew by more than 50% since he took office, what did we exactly get for that growth of the state government? It's a mystery that I have yet to hear somebody answer that basic question.
Oh, it's a fascinating thing. And Ashley Zavala of KCRA3 asked him about that today, how when he started as governor, it was $202 billion. This one is $320 billion. What exactly are we getting for this? And Gavin starts touting all these education programs that he started and all these other expansions to all these other government programs. Meantime, California now ranks behind Mississippi when it comes to reading and writing.
Oh, that's a signature achievement right there for his presidential campaign. Holy moly. And I assume then that means we're that closer to the bridge of nowhere being built?
Well, there is the $1 billion a year that goes towards the high-speed rail that is nowhere close to actually ever being completed, but they're now spending your money on propaganda ads to tell you what a great project it is.
Oh, Lord. And what is this thing about delaying cutting off the benefit for people who should never have been on the public payroll to begin with, which is the undocumented getting health care benefits when we can't get those same health care benefits to our own citizens and legal residents? All he's doing is watering down the resource so less and less care is available to those who actually deserve it.
And by putting that cutoff not until next year, you're actually incentivizing as many people as possible to join while they can and know that they'll get locked in, whether this $100 premium happens or not. The system that we have is insolvent, and none of that's going to get reimbursed by the federal government for obvious reasons.
Definitely. And go back to 2011, the state budget was $86 billion. It's more than tripled in the span of 14 years. And now we have the homeless industrial complex has expanded beyond belief. Our homeless population continues to grow unchecked. And what is the response from state and local authorities? Let's just fudge the numbers because no one's really going to notice.
I mean, that's literally what we did locally, where you had the appointed head of the LA Homeless Services Authority, Felicia Adams-Kellum, hiding what the real numbers were for Karen Bass's Inside Safe because she didn't want Karen Bass to look bad. And they won't tell you where any of the money went for all the money that we've spent billions on homelessness. They don't even know where it went.
I can't only imagine when I was in office and I had about a $3.5 billion budget. Oh, my God. I was raked through the coals for doing my job. Imagine if I hid money like that, what the outcome would have been.
Sheriff Villanueva, since you're here, and I just have to ask you because it's always on my mind, what are your thoughts on the county's plan to currently try to close Men's Central Jail?
It's a plan grounded in sheer idiocy and ideology and nothing more. You cannot close Men's Central Jail. You'd have to cut the jail population in half and basically kick some of the most violent people in America out onto the streets into your backyard. That is their plan. It is grounded strictly to that decarceration model for the people that don't believe in prisons or jails. And they think people are going to just, grab a guitar and sing Kumbaya around the campfire once they get out of jail. And they commission their own studies. 2 in a row, they spend like $250,000 on each study. And each study, the consultant said, you can't close Men's Central Jail without a replacement. What do they do? Hey, let's order another study. That is the asinine approach of this Board of Supervisors, because it is all driven by far left progressive ideology, and gone are the days when you had supervisors that were pretty much conservative or liberals, but they were very cautious with the public's finances. Those days are gone.
I think you're totally right about that. Sheriff Villanueva, I'm late for a break, but thanks so much for calling in. Call back anytime, buddy. We'd love to talk to you.
You got it, Randy. Take care.
There you go. Look at that. Surprise call from Alex Villanueva. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Gavin Newsom's plan to balance the budget is not kick any of the undocumented off of Medi-Cal, but cap them from joining the program next year, and in 2 years charge them a $100 premium per month. Do you think that's going to balance the budget? What do you want to see happen with the expansion of Medi-Cal right here in California? 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. More of your calls coming up next. If you're on hold, stay on hold. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com, and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. My thanks to former LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva for calling in. That was kind of cool. Love to talk to him. Actually, I'd love to talk to him in the future about everything that's going on at LA County Probation as well. He probably knows a lot more than most of us do on these subjects. But yeah, the state of California is in an $11 billion budget deficit, and part of that is because of the expansion of Medi-Cal to people in the country illegally. That expansion is going to be capped if Newsom's budget proposal goes through starting next year, and then starting the year after that, they're going to charge a $100 a month premium to the people on that program. So they got a whole 7 months to still join the program, which we already did not estimate properly how expensive it was going to be. So you think this is the silver bullet to balance the budget? 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to David in Orange. David, hello.
How you doing, Randy?
Doing great.
So these numbers are actually worse than what you're laying out here, because when you take into account the 14 million people that you alluded to earlier, that also doesn't take into account those residents in California that are on Medicare. And those people are not making substantial amounts of money. They're making good money in their retirement. But now you've got even fewer people to contribute for taxes and everything else that the state needs in order to keep things going. And so when you start cutting back on the people that are qualifying for Medi-Cal, those people aren't really going to probably leave. They're going to stay here and they'll go to an emergency room as they need their medical care. Those things will be written off. That's more debt for the hospitals and the urgent care centers around the state. And the people that are flush with cash and have the ability, as you know, they've been leaving this state over the last several years, and that population is getting smaller. So your taxable base, the target that you're going to draw from, is getting worse. So that man, Mr. WD-40 up there in Sacramento, he's not giving the whole picture, and this thing's going to get worse before it gets better.
Oh, I think it's going to get a lot worse. And one of the things that's interesting, and you pointed it out there, is Gavin Newsom has touted, how generous Medi-Cal is, expanding Medi-Cal to, well, we need to do this because people are just going to go to the emergency rooms if we don't do this. But I don't know about you, but I have not seen any alleviation in how packed emergency rooms are since before we did this, even going back for years. Emergency rooms have been packed before this, and they're packed now.
And they'll get worse. The bad debt for those facilities will get worse. And I don't know if you saw this today, but RFK Jr. actually testified before the Senate and already has gone on record that under the next budget proposal, they're taking 1 million people off of Medi-Cal, or Medicaid, I should say, which is Medi-Cal here in California. They're taking 1 million people off the rolls over the next year. That's going to hugely impact California from a funding standpoint. So I don't know what kind of a magic money tree this guy has got in order to find the funding that he thinks he's going to get. But you can keep slicing up that bologna all day long, but it's just bologna when it gets all through.
I think you make a very fair point. David, thank you so much for the call, buddy. Appreciate it.
You take care.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Let's go to Lori listening in Calabasas. Lori, hello. Lori? Lori on the radio in Calabasas. Going once. Going twice. Lori wasn't paying attention. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. When we come back, we'll hear Gavin Newsom explain why California's budget has gone from $200 billion in 2018 to $320 billion in 2025. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. If you'd like to email us, you can do so at randykabc@gmail.com. Lane writes in and says, I don't think the budget's fair. As a sole provider and basically living paycheck to paycheck on a humble salary, I had to pay $650 a month for my health insurance under Obamacare, and I didn't even use it. I'm not on any medications, didn't have any underlying conditions, knocking wood. I think it's important to address the root cause of the poverty level receiving Medi-Cal. Demographics as it relates to their trade career. Are they unable to work, not earning enough, possibly as housekeepers, pool maintenance, gardeners, handiwork movers? If they were paid a living wage and able to work 40 hours a week, supplementing their medical insurance wouldn't have to come out of our pockets. It's interesting, right? There is a noticeable gap between making just under the poverty line and qualifying for Medi-Cal to how much you have to make, where now you have to pay for your own insurance and you have to break even. There are thousands of dollars that you could be making in salary that you'll be at a loss by getting out from under those programs. And that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, our whole system's insane to begin with. The fact that she was paying that much for health insurance, I don't understand our system. No one knows what anything costs. It's super confusing. And people all throughout the state, ones that are paying for their own health insurance, they're afraid to go to the doctor because they're afraid what the bill will be. That's still happening today, unless you're on Medi-Cal. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang. When we come back, Gavin Newsom explains to Ashley Zavala why the budget is 50% higher than it was 6 years ago. This is Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're going through Gavin Newsom's budget proposal, $11 billion in the hole. And the way we fix that is not by kicking people off of Medi-Cal who are in the country illegally, but stopping them from joining next year and the year after that, charging them a $100 a month premium. Let's go to Lori in Calabasas. Lori, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great.
Great. My thought was I don't think that's going to fix the problem, but if that's what was going to be done, I would also suggest adding co-pays for services. When someone goes to the doctor, when someone goes to the hospital or emergency room, or when they get prescriptions.
Yeah, because most other health plans, that's what you have to do. And I understand this is a program for the destitute, but it's so generous that there's a certain level of income that you have to make where you're actually losing money because now you don't qualify for Medi-Cal anymore.
Right, exactly. I agree with that.
Thanks so much for the call, Lori. Appreciate it. Let's go to Ray in Manhattan Beach. Ray, hello.
Hello. Pre the Affordable Care Act, my health care was $170 a month. And for the exact same policy, years later, it went up to $1,700 a month. When I called my senators and congressmen, they said, well, we have to pay for other people that don't have health care. So health care is no longer you're buying the program. You're subsidizing, it's a tax. You're subsidizing other people. And if you go to the California website for health care and you plug in the policy, you adjust your income up and down, the price dramatically changes depending on how much you earn. So the more you earn, the more expensive the policy is. So,
that's equity. No, it's baffling. And we incent because it's so unbelievably expensive. If you're at the middle income or you're a higher income earner, you're actually incentivized to make less money in the state because of how expensive the healthcare is. Like if your premium goes from $0 to $600 a month, that's a huge, huge change.
There are people that quit their jobs when they know they have a big procedure coming up, so that way it's covered.
I think that totally happens. You're totally right, buddy. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. Let's see if we can squeeze in a little of Gavin and Ashley Zavala as she tries to ask him, what's the deal? Why the budget has gotten so big?
Hi, Governor. Ashley Zavala with KCRA 3. And speaking of the federal government, my question is in that space. But first, let's start with the fact that this is your second to last budget presentation as governor of California. And the first budget that you ever worked out with the legislature was about $208 billion. And what you've presented today represents a $114 billion increase from...
It's 50% higher in 6 years.
From that first budget that you set. And budget watchers, including the Legislative Analyst's Office.
So let's hear what Gavin has to say. Why is the budget so much bigger? What are we getting for all that?
Well, we went from a $3 billion economy, trillion-dollar economy a few years ago to a $4.1 trillion economy. This nation state has grown, and as a consequence, we've grown into a different approach in terms of our investments. We're also trying to reconcile a lot of challenges we face. So, no, I'm very proud of the work we've done creating a brand new grade, TK for All. I'm very proud of the work we've done to be the nation's leader as it relates to food insecurity and addressing that as it relates to free meals in our public schools.
I mean, you can go on and on and on about all the things that you've spent on education, but the truth is California had the worst recovery coming out of COVID, and California right now has English and math levels that are below Alabama and Mississippi.
I'm very proud of the work we've done on
I'm from California, so of course I don't know how to pronounce that.
I'm very proud of the work we've done on after school and summer school for all and the importance that we've placed on that, including high-dose tutoring and reading specialists and addressing some.
This is Gavin to a T. What are the outcomes of these programs? It's not so much to create a program, but does it work? Is it effective? If it's not, we shouldn't pay for it. But what we do in California is we just say, well, we'll keep paying for that, but we'll create even more programs, even more bureaucracy, and hire more people. And that's the thing. Most of the government spending is people and nonprofits. So we have hired 50% more people to work in the state of California in the last 6 years.
Addressing some of the gaps as it relates to literacy. I'm very proud of the.
I mean, you want to talk about some bloat. You know how every time Gavin talks about closing the prisons, he says the reason we got to do this is because it costs more to send someone to prison than it does to send them to Stanford. It's like $130,000 a year. Well, the actual cost of like clothing and feeding a prisoner is about $15,000. The rest of that money is all of the massive raises that have gone to the prison guards union. And yeah, that's a hell of a scary job. And I sure as hell don't want to do it. But we keep increasing those salaries and those pensions, even though we reduce the prison population by half.
Proud of the work we have done on forest and vegetation management and the critical and essential nature of that work to protecting.
Gavin, the worst fires that have ever happened in the state happened under your watch, including the one a few months ago. These are not outcomes.
Our communities, I'm very proud of the fact we protected our communities with unprecedented investments into vertical prosecution grants and supporting local law enforcement agencies, more accountability and more transparency, addressing the issues of retail theft. And
you campaigned against Prop 36.
Quality of life crimes. I'm proud of the investments we're making in behavioral health, and I think they're long overdue.
California has the worst mental health crisis in the entire country and most of the homeless.
And important. I'm proud of a lot of the work we've done in child care and what I wanted to do more in this year's budget.
Gavin Newsom, this state has more poverty than any other state. And you know what? You can call me a California hater, but I'm born and raised here. I'm just seeing a whole lot of big fancy ideas and zero follow through and zero outcomes. And that's the problem with California. Hey, tune in for more of this tomorrow. The News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC.